Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone to the August 16th, 2010 meeting of the Goffstown Board of Selectmen. If everyone please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Selectman Fournier is out of town this week, and I do expect Selectman Devanza here shortly. So therefore, I'm going to defer the acceptance of the meeting minutes until that time. And since I know we have members of the public here, I'm going to go to public comment first. And I believe we have Mr. and Mrs. Devrient here. So if you have a comment for the board?
I just have a statement that I'd like to read.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, if you could just come up to the front so the microphones can pick you up. Did you hear from DPW this afternoon?
I did.
Okay.
No, we heard from the police.
From the police department, actually,
Okay.
It came by.
All right.
But we're struggling as it is in this economy, and the construction company in the town have really done not much to help us out. Several weeks ago, when they put up all the detour signs and sound, we went to see the town engineer to ask why no signs saying business is open were up. And the engineer told us that the police department were the ones that requested the detour signs. I asked why another business had a sign saying business is open and was told that they had made an agreement with the homeowner. We went to the police department as we knew the engineer would do nothing for us. The police department told us that they went back to the engineer and told us there would be a sign saying business is open at the detours. Wouldn't this have been the considerate thing to do, as the businesses on this corridor of construction still have to operate on a daily basis without us having to ask for it? We have seen other municipalities under construction, excuse me, and they have had consideration for all their businesses during construction with individual signs for businesses. We therefore didn't think it would be too much to ask for the businesses along this affected corridor of construction to have one sign saying business is open. Now we find out that the road is not closed this week, but next week. Now I'll have to pay someone for 2 weeks, if you allow us to operate for an additional week at our satellite, to operate the other stand, as all of our customers are under the assumption that the road is closed this week. We have people calling daily to ask if they can get to us with the road closures and detours. I've cut 2 shifts a day from ice cream at my main place of business because of decline in sales during road constructions. They are all doing this construction during our peak business time and not being friendly in any way, shape, or form. While we appreciate you allow us to operate in a satellite stand, this is no way compensating us for the loss at our main place of business. Excuse me. We've had the worst weekend we've had in years due to the signs saying roads closed with detour signs at both ends of town. Now you're telling us that the plans we've made to recuperate some of that lost business have to change because the construction company isn't ready. We've been told now that the road is open for the rest of the week and will be closed next week. We are furthermore shutting off the water from 8:30 to 2:30 on Tuesday, so now I have to close my ice cream stand for half a day because I can't serve food without water. We don't understand why this project was not done at night, the water project, when it would be more appropriate and business friendly. I realize there are residents along this construction corridor as well, but their livelihood does not depend on the road construction. Now this project, excuse me, is going to hold us up for another week, till almost Labor Day, which is the end of the peak growing season for us. We don't understand how you justify all of these decisions to the businesses who operate on Route 114 and the Route 114 corridor. Is it not the job of the engineers to work with the construction company to make sure that everything is done properly and in a timely manner? If this is the best they can do, then someone's not doing their job, and we're all paying for it in one way or another. This is federal stimulus.
That's all we have to say. Thank you.
Any comments from the board? I will. I'm sorry that that's their experience, and I just want to try to reiterate that as a town, I think we try our very best to have plans, meet with the construction companies. There are construction meetings that happen all the time, and unfortunately there are snafus and there are delays. Whenever you dig in a road, you find things that you didn't think were there. And I just want to try to, it's easy to go and, try to place blame at different folks, but I just want to try to give, some own personal experiences. you know, anytime you go into like a home remodeling project, and many of you may have or have not over your lifetimes, you go in there, you have a budget, and sometimes that budget exceeds it. And if you've watched any of these home improvement shows, oftentimes the budgets go a lot higher than what you have initially planned for. Sometimes the materials that were supposed to be delivered for some reason didn't get delivered. I guess we don't blame ourselves on those home improvement things, or sometimes you can blame the contractor. I can tell you that the town has been very diligent in meeting with the contractor, Delory, and that there were, and David, if you could help me out, I believe that there were some delays in pipes and other things.
Up to a week ago, it was the full intention to proceed with a culvert starting today across the entire width of Mass Road. That was their intention, a week or 10 days ago, and that's why the road closure was scheduled starting today. As they were getting ready to do that, they found a water pipe problem that had to be solved first. And one of the comments made here just a moment ago was that the water for the immediate residents in the area would have to be shut off while that pipe was fixed. And then I guess the culvert, the installation of the box culvert will be next week. If we're assuming the water pipe problem can be solved first.
So, long story short is I think we knew going into this, when I say we, that the town and our Department of Public Works knew that this project would have a certain degree of difficulty, and it's not just this one. If you look at our sewer project that's going on in the Pinardville section, they ran into ledge in certain areas that had to get blasted. These are the unknowns. So it's like when you go in, you remodel a house, and you open up walls, and then all of a sudden you find out that you might have insect damage or water damage or poor electrical. You have to deal with these things if you're going to effectuate a proper repair. This just happens to be on a lot bigger scale, and unfortunately the consequence is that it's a very big inconvenience, and in many cases it has a significant economic impact on business, and I think we recognize that, and we're sensitive to it. With regard to evening construction, that's something that the board has talked about in the past, and there are the pros and the cons to it are that we do have a lot of residential homes along that corridor as well, and it's that balancing act of what do you do, and I don't think right now we would have to have a waiver of an ordinance in order to do that. But I know that it's a difficult thing for the residents in that area and for the businesses in Goffstown to deal with some of these things. But this is the very same infrastructure that we rely upon for our water and sewer and roadways, and we need to we certainly need to pay attention to improving those things, and there is a bump in the road as we go through it. Is there anything else that anybody would like to add?
Notwithstanding the road closure itself, one of the things I heard was during the actual construction, the absence of signs stating that businesses are still open. Can we check into that? And if in fact those signs are not there? Pinardville, I noticed some signs.
Pinardville, there were.
They say signs, businesses are open.
And I did see a sign today, that business open.
Can we make sure that there are signs on both ends?
The email I had received was that signage was an issue, barricades were an issue, and those were some of the other reasons why it was being delayed till all of that could be in place.
Right. I think it was more so there was some safety issues with regard to the way the contractor was planning on doing this that was not up to standards, and that's part of I think what Nick is saying though is that in the interim.
I was wondering if that was part of the signage, the business.
No. Signage saying I'm not sure if that was the case. But even if the reader boards can also be changed to say, business is open, during construction, I think for the most part, and I could be, off. I think most people recognize now that there is construction going on, and that whether they live in Ware or Dunbarton or they live in Goffstown. I think if the road is going to be closed, that's one thing. I don't necessarily think that we have to create or incite.
I attended a meeting for the sewer construction in Bernardville, and a meeting that was solely discussing traffic signs and, a selection of routes dealing with the detours and what signage would be for those routes. And also part of that discussion was signs advising people that businesses along the construction route remain open. It was very clear we needed to have that discussion because it's stores along the entire route,
Yeah.
left and right. It was, very, very obvious. For this construction site, Mass Road, right in, I'm only aware of one business that was right in the midst of the construction.
Right.
And that one was provided a sign.
I think the big message for, for those in the community who might be watching is, the local businesses, especially now, desperately need your support in terms of, your spending power. So if you do have a choice to purchase locally, it would be greatly appreciated if you would assist local businesses, whether they be farmers or gas station owners or fast food or other businesses that we have in town. There's been many studies shown that if you do spend locally, it has a multiplying effect in terms of the local economy. So there's a great opportunity for us to help each other out, and certainly we want our local businesses to thrive. So if we could urge our constituents out there to spend locally, that would be greatly appreciated. Anything else regarding the public comment? And if there's any other, Sue, if there's any other feedback, as long as, we just found out about the delay, the selectmen found out via email this afternoon. Mm-hmm. So for those who may thought we knew this earlier, we just found out about it ourselves. So if there's any other changes, if DPW could just communicate that, so that if we do get calls from folks, we can at least know what's going on. I have a couple of announcements or good news. This one was addressed to the Department of Public Works. I wanted to express my gratitude for all the help my family and I received during the interment of
I cannot make out that word, though I tried.
ashes of several family members. Jason Georgantis was always kind and extremely helpful. This was so appreciated by all of us. He is a credit to the town. Tim Maloney was also very helpful and sweet, especially on the interment day. Thanks again for all your help. Warm wishes. Melanie Palomino.
There's several family names
Finney
there.
Henderson. There's many families here who signed off on that. Next one, to our friends at DPW, thank you very much for sending over vehicles for the Touch a Truck event. That was part of our summer reading program. The families that attended had a lot of fun. We hope the rest of your summer goes well. And that was from Marcia McKay, Head of Youth Services at the Goffstown Public Library. And I think, a special word of thanks should go out to our residents. I mean, it's safe to say we knew that this would be a very difficult construction season, and I appreciate everyone's patience. It's something that has to be done. All the road construction and the sewer lines, et cetera, these things are necessities, and they're very inconvenient, and it's having an impact on businesses, but it's something that had to be done, and I appreciate folks, the patience that people have been exhibiting, and that's that. Next, I did skip over, Phil, the minutes of the 9th. I don't know. I don't necessarily think we have to wait for Steve, so we could approve the meeting minutes of the 9th if the board is so inclined.
Here, so I'd be abstaining.
You'd be abstaining anyway. Oops, just broke the pens. Does the board wish to defer it till next week? I have no problem proceeding. Does anybody want to make a motion?
Sure. I'll move to accept the minutes of August 9th.
All right.
Second.
Seconded, okay. Any corrections from anyone? No, not hearing any. All those in favor of accepting the August 9th minutes, say aye.
Aye.
It's 3-0-1.
You said August 9th, right?
Yes.
August 9th, yeah.
I'm abstaining.
Okay, is there anyone here that would like to make public comment? No. All right, we'll go right into our town administrator's report.
Thank you. Your weekly meeting schedule is in your packet, and it's a light week with library trustees on Wednesday at 6:30.
Okay.
Consensus folders, AP warrants, employee status report, New Hampshire Homeland Security Emergency Management Grant for Fire Communications. You already signed this before, but the directions provided were not as accurate as FEMA wanted in their audit, so we've got revised directions and it's marked in your packet. Access and utility easement, the rail trail, and letter of support for Tiger 2 grant application for 293 exit 6 and 7 for the United States Department of Transportation.
Motion to approve.
Motion to, do I have a second, then we'll have discussion? You want something?
I'll
removed?
second.
You'll second it? Okay.
I just have a question. Can we get before we, on the letter of support for the Tiger 2 grant, can we get some clarification on that? From what I've seen on designs, that road is only going out to Dunbarton Road, which does
I
not...
had mentioned that to Brian to make sure that it was going to benefit Goffstown, and he's been in contact with David Priest at Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission.
So do we want to get
You
that
want to see the
information
revised plan?
first?
Yeah, I
Then
think the deadline is this week, but when we didn't receive the revised plan.
Well, I guess, wouldn't it, even though it's Dunbarton Road, it would still have a positive, you don't think it would have a positive impact for Goffstown nonetheless?
Well, the truck, in order to get to the industrial park, would either have to go down to Front Street, in which case they're still
I'm
on...
clear, I'm just talking about regardless of whether it's truck impact. I'm just saying, even if it's just regular motor vehicles, that would have the ability to, I think that would shorten many people's trips off the highway, depending upon where they live anyway.
But I think what Nick is getting at is originally when this came through to us, it was our understanding that this was to alleviate the issue with no through truck traffic.
On the back road.
Right, to
Right.
get there. So now all of a sudden, we don't have that, and this has changed the
Right.
entire scope of this. That's why we were pushing for it, because it had a positive impact on us. And now that's gone.
Okay, the latest one I received from Brian Rose, he says he spoke to David Priest, and he said that the plans to connect the Goffstown back road to the new interchange had not changed. He referenced a plan drawn by CLD Consulting Engineers. That is just a conceptual plan, but it's currently the only thing that exists as a plan for that project. He also said that the next, timeliness of the letter, that if we got it to him tomorrow, that would be still timely.
Well, I mean, I thought that there was a change because I had seen something that was completely different than what we had discussed and what we had sent and requested other towns for supporting. It seemed to
Yeah, I was at that meeting with CLD and Steve Griffin way back when, and when we made it clear that there had to be a benefit to the town of Goffstown, and especially for economic development purposes, and that the access road should run to tie at the town line so that we don't run into that trucking restriction on the back road in Manchester.
But even when David Priest was here, we had that discussion with it. That's my recollection is we had that discussion.
We had talked about. Is this different because the trucks would come down Dunbarton Road, right?
Well, going the opposite way, the only way you could get to the industrial park, you'd have to go up Dunbarton and then make that sharp hairpin left onto Straw Road.
Right.
Which I don't know if a tractor trailer could do that.
Where did you think that this thing was going to pop out?
But wait a minute. How do you, excuse me, but how do you go from Goffstown into Manchester onto Straw Road? Because I thought at the Manchester line was no through trucks.
Right.
So how does a truck go through Manchester to get to Straw Road?
And that's why I was asking for clarification, because under that scenario, they can't, either from Front Street or from
That's
Straw
a
Road.
30-mile road, Straw Road. That's a residential road.
So that's why I was looking for, if we could just get more clarification or some...
Well, I think that, do we want to have a contingent motion? Because it sounds to me...
The deadline is tomorrow.
The
for
deadline is
letter of
tomorrow,
support.
so if the plan allows for the possibility of an interchange at exit 6 and 7, which would allow for truck traffic to alleviate the issues on the back road, then that's what we supported, and that's what we would continue to support.
Right.
If for some reason that is not part of the plan anymore,
Then we
then
won't
we
send
will
a
not
letter.
support it. Is that fair to say? Because I just don't want us to miss out on an opportunity here to endorse something that's what we want to endorse. So if it's not going to positively impact, us by alleviating the problems that
The
we have
truck
on the back
restriction,
road, the
yeah.
truck
Right.
restrictions, then we're not for it.
Right.
This is one of the concerns I would have if we supported something that did not
Right. Oh, I hear you.
alleviate
Right.
the truck, and then we try down the road, and they're gonna
Yeah.
look back and say, well,
You
you guys
supported it, right.
supported
Yeah.
this, you know?
Yeah.
And it-
Okay.
I guess my other question is that, I don't have the consensus folder, but does our letter of support does it need to be tweaked? To just highlight what Goffstown's interests are? The letter of support can just state that we support this project in so much as it alleviate, here's what our issues are, and this would alleviate that. I don't have any problem, that might be the easiest alternative, to make sure that, yeah, we support it if it accomplishes
Yeah,
this.
that's the caveat.
Right.
As long as
Okay.
it,
Sue, you good on that? We're clear?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So with that being said, we have I think we have a motion, right, on this consensus folder?
No, I
thought-
seconded.
right.
We
this is
do
a
have-
motion.
We did. All those in favor of accepting the consensus folder, say aye.
Aye.
All right, that's 4-0. Next is assessor recommendations.
Abatement for 2008, 2009 tax years per the BTLA decision.
All right, need a
Motion
motion.
to accept assessor's
Do I
recommendation.
have a second? Seconded by Selectman Devanz. All those in favor? Aye. 4-0.
Thank you. DPW had a few items. Kyle couldn't be here tonight. The first one, though, he'd like to wait till next week so he can address any concerns regarding that bid spec. Second one was a revised letter to Lynchville Danis Park residents, and it's been revised since. Actually, I think in your signature folder you have,
Oh, no, it's here.
Oh.
But they all have a copy. of
Okay, so
that.
this took into consideration Selectman Pierce's comments.
right. He, Selectman Pierce has been working with
Right.
Megan, and the last draft, the only change I have made since you and Megan took a last look at it, Dave, was
He knows.
contentions to connections. Contentions to connections, yeah.
Spell check didn't catch that there.
Yeah, I
So
would,
that's changed from
on
this
the
one that we
final one,
just.
yeah.
And, yes, I wanted changes to two sentences to clarify a deposit being made to the town upon presentation of the signed contract, and that change was done.
I have one question.
Mhm.
This letter that I'm looking at that was on here, is that
Yes.
what's in there? Can I just see that for 1 second?
Except for the last, second to last paragraph.
Okay, the word's been changed.
Yeah, connections, yeah.
Contentions to connection.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, I need a motion then to accept this letter and to have it issued.
Motion to accept this letter to be sent to the residents of
Lynchville Danis Park.
Lynchville
Is there a
Danis Park
second?
area.
Second.
Seconded by Selectman Devanza. Question by Selectman Campusano.
Just a quick question, and I guess it gets back to our conversation from last week. The town is making the final payments to the contractor.
Yes.
Yes,
We are collecting the equivalent of their 45%.
or appropriate.
Right.
What happens if
Or
there's
cap.
an issue with the contractor, something comes up where, are we putting ourselves in the middle of a,
No, they have to come in with their,
Homeowner
if there's a change
contractor
order during the,
I'm not even
That's
saying a
not a
change
question,
order.
though.
I'm talking about some other cases that we've had in the past where a homeowner says, the contractor did this on my property,
He
or
said, she
they
said thing, and
they damaged this, or anything that comes up, are we now in a position because?
no, we're just the
we-
financial agent here.
Well,
we're,
so
yes, so.
question I have though, following up on that, I mean, when somebody goes to sue, they always go for the deep pockets, and when they're looking at that, the town's going to deep pockets, so we probably would be listed on it.
No, the contract is between the homeowner and the contractor for the
We're just
workmanship.
writing a check.
We're just basically a fiscal agent here.
Contractor wants to be paid, the homeowner says, don't pay them.
Then they don't get paid, and then the contractor goes after the homeowner, period.
payment's coming from us.
It's a contract between the homeowner and the contractor, not between us. We're just the one cutting a check. I've seen this arrangement work before, and I don't think we have any legal exposure here. It's a contract, it's not a contract, the town is not a party to this contract. And I do believe that Drescher has looked through this, and this was the only way that we could do it, is if we were the fiscal agents, just the one who's gonna take money and pay money. And that's
Or pass-through.
We're a pass-through, period.
So we can't pass through to the homeowner?
You'd rather us make the
Here's
last
an easy-
payment to the homeowner and trust them to make it to the...
Well,
Here's an easy one.
like I said
If
last
that
week, it was just to
happens,
keep
right,
it easy,
If that
simple.
happens, if you get into that situation and you have a he said, she said,
There
you
you
can
go.
always cut it, a co-payable check to
Put it in
both.
escrow.
What?
Or
You
put it in
got it.
escrow.
And just say, here you go, because that homeowner can't sign the check, and neither can the contractor individually, and that usually solves the problem, so. Okay, so that being said, we have a motion on the table to approve the letter to the Lynchville Daniels Park residents. It's been seconded. If there's no further discussion, we'll take a vote. We're good to vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
4-0. Thank you.
The other item Carl had was just a memo updating the board, and we've gotten more updates since then, so, on the South Mass Road drainage. The other new item that arose after the packets were put together was the roof at Town Hall. When they got the shingles off, they realized that the plywood was all buckled, and therefore we need to put more plywood on top of the plywood. We had, Art Rose was good enough to come over on Friday and look at it and make sure that it could support additional plywood and that it would meet, and he also recommended that a felt barrier be placed between the current plywood and the new plywood. The additional cost would be approving a change order for $12,000. There's sufficient money in the Mildred Stark Fund for that. But it will put us over our appropriation level. But not townwide, it won't. But for the project.
I'm just trying to, in my mind, figure out how many squares or square feet we've got of plywood, and that, is that?
And Dave did look at that, and Dave added that all up, and then called the local contractor, see what the cost was, and then asked this contractor how much, and it's about the same. The materials
Just a question.
value.
Is it the entire roof, both sides? And you say the plywood is buckled? Do you know what is down there now?
Yeah, it was, code is 5/8, but back then code wasn't 5/8.
So it was
It was half
inch.
inch.
It's probably 2-foot centers.
It is very good.
It just seems $12,000.
No, it's
I
not bad.
don't-
When I got a price on doing a roof on one of the places that I was looking at, and there was, because it was an older roof, had to get stripped, and then there was a price if they needed plywood. And when I first saw the price on the plywood, I did a double take on it, but then when I checked, it's probably about right. You're looking at $6,000 a sign. That's 5/8
Yes,
exterior, and I'm sure, is it tongue and groove?
I didn't get into that detail. Let's see.
It might be because it's 2-foot on centers and you're going over buckle.
Number 15-pound felt paper to entire existing roof deck. Supply and install half-inch fir plywood over existing roof deck.
What size plywood?
Half-inch.
Oh, it's not 5/8?
No, because you already have a half-inch down.
Okay.
Fasteners
Maybe it
shall
won't
be
tongue and groove.
8 penny ring nails, and plywood shall be fastened down at 6-inch on center. Continue original roofing specifications and new plywood deck.
Oh, can I see that?
Yep.
Take the size of the roof, take the square footage, you could calculate how many sheets you have, and then there's a
And Dave
standard-
Roberge, yeah,
standard
did that.
calculation per sheet.
Otherwise, there wouldn't be a warranty
Know
on
what the
the,
length of the building is?
not offhand.
Okay.
I'm not voting for this. I'm not voting for it only because I think the bid, I mean, you have to say, you have an you know, how many square feet you have. I wouldn't accept that from my own house, so I'm not gonna accept it for the town, so.
What do you think is lacking?
The measurements,
It's a whole roof.
that's great, is it, you know, so, I don't know.
We would-
Y-
He's
I'm just saying
he's
that,
getting to the, what is the cost per square yard?
yeah, or square foot, you know, what's the square foot?
So we
what's-
know that the bid was in the ballpark.
Well, it's not really a bid.
I mean, if I'm
Well,
doing a
cost, it's a
roofing,
change-
if I'm
it's a
doing a
change
roofing
order.
job, it's done by this, you know, by a square. I just don't know
What
what,
I'm saying is that Dave Roberge calculated it all out and called Mass Road Grain and Lumber and found out what the material cost was.
Right.
Then he went to the contractor
right, but
and
you're
asked
asking,
them.
and I know that, but
Okay.
you're asking me to approve something, and I don't have what you just said he did to approve a $12,000 cost overrun, which is like 30% more than what we have originally, or maybe 25% more than what we have originally budgeted, and
But
I
we're
just-
replacing the entire roof deck,
Right.
which we were not planning on.
well, I understand that.
So that's
I
the cost.
understand
If you look at the
that.
size of this building, as I say, it's $6,000 a side. It's not an exorbitant amount of money.
But it's okay, I can be in the minority on things, so it's fine.
Well, I think one of the reasons why we have Dave, we've hired Dave was to look at some of these things, and they think he did the work.
Mhm.
I mean, if the board is gonna look at it and start calculating the square footage of it and how much it is, does anybody have the little book that gives the, cost estimating for,
Yeah, I do.
replacing deck? Do you have it with you so that we
No,
could do
I have,
so?
I mean, at work,
I have it too at
I'd be
home, but
able
I'm not
to,
here prepared to do
Right.
it, and I'm not gonna micromanage that, and I don't think $6,000 a side is exorbitant, because don't forget you're including the felt paper.
And labor.
yeah, the labor and bringing it up on a lift is, I understand all that. Okay, all those in favor of proceeding with the change order, say aye.
Aye.
Do we have a
We
motion?
have
Oh,
a
we need a
motion, we
motion
need a
first.
motion, I'm sorry,
So moved.
Second.
seconded. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 All those against, me, that's 3-1. Okay,
Before we get too further, could we go back to the Delory memo?
What number was it in the packet?
Number 4.
It's at the end of it, right?
it's,
Middle.
middle.
Middle, yeah.
Update on Delory Construction.
There was some discussion, at least in here, leading me to believe that they may not be done in time. When we originally authorized the change order, or at least the awarding of that portion to Delory, there was talk about putting something in language to tie them to the end date. Can we find out from Carl
Full contract?
what that language was? Could we also get an update, because there's talking here about nickeling and diming and change orders and expenses. Can we get a snapshot cost to date, where we are and what additional charges are being incurred and the reasons for them?
Anything else? And last but not least, obviously we have the newspaper here, but if there's any way that we can kind of communicate to residents, especially if we can get something from Carl next week, okay? We all know that projects run into snafus and there are delays. I haven't seen one actually go ahead of schedule. But if we could somehow give residents and some of our stakeholders, such as businesses and residents along that road, as well as the school district and all the citizens, okay, here's what we're going to expect. So, Carl is letting us know that they expect the majority of the paving to be done prior to school, but there's going to be sidewalks and landscaping, et cetera, that's going to have to get done while school is going to be in session. And I think what we have to be cognizant of is, is traffic again. And, is there a possibility of, work starting after school starts? And, I mean, can we be a little bit creative here in terms of, when the work gets done? And let the key stakeholders, know what's going on.
And, Mr. Chair, I'd like to take this opportunity just to let residents know of two construction aspects of what they see as asphalt on the roundabout. Ultimately, the roundabout will be 2 feet greater on the outside, and that pavement hasn't been put down because the granite curbing has been put in first. And then neither has the inside dimension with the rumble strips of pavers. That hasn't been defined as yet.
So the paving was meant more to be a dust control?
Dust
just
control,
right.
Temporary
Right.
circle.
Base coat for the
Base coat.
center,
And
because
base
what
coat.
David is saying, when they come in and put the curbing in,
Right.
there's a couple of feet between
They need
this
to give,
asphalt
right.
and that'll get dug out, that'll get paved,
Right.
and that'll be your base pavement.
The actual definition of the lane, which will be the roundabout lane, hasn't been fully defined.
Okay.
It's more than
So you're
what
looking at more of a,
It's more than what they see right now.
yeah.
Right, oh, absolutely.
Right. Okay. Anything else? All right. And is that all we have, Sue?
Yes.
All right. The next is, I'm gonna skip around a little bit. I know our fire chief is here, but that's gonna require some non-public, which we'll do towards the end. Chief Sullivan is here. Is there any, hold on, let me see.
They're here for discussion, CIP also.
Right, okay. So we're gonna move to the CIP submissions, to the planning board, and Philip, were you at planning board? They did, vote to
Almost
recommend.
didn't.
Almost, okay, you wanted to share with us? Well, not
It's
that,
done.
but it's done, they recommended it, or?
Right.
Okay, so now, we did get a revised CIP matrix. Phil, last week we had a discussion, we just went through, the matrix.
I have mine from planning board Friday, Thursday, I don't know if there's been any changes since the
No,
revised one on Thursday.
Did you have a bond payment in 2011?
Yes,
Okay.
on the revised one.
Yeah.
But I don't know if there was any other changes.
No, that was it.
Nope, there was just the title at the top and then the correction on those bond payments in the right.
Because my understanding was there was a typo on one of the other lines.
Oh, there was?
Someplace.
All right, so, last week, we went through all of the, we went through the entire capital improvements plan for 2011, and really what I think Nick was the one who highlighted it. There was really about, was it 5 to 7 really big or bigger or larger capital expenditures. The other ones were, more nominal,
Right,
more
but
nominal in nature.
Also with that, there's additional revenue, I believe.
Additional what?
Some additional revenue with that,
I think we added an additional bond payment that wasn't.
Right.
but I thought there was some additional revenue for offsetting revenue for one of those projects.
There's for the fire engine, there would be revenue from the capital reserve fund.
That's shown.
Oh,
That's
revenue
shown.
for the communication systems, is that
Right,
it?
Correct.
right,
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 Is that
right,
it?
right, right,
Right.
that's,
Right.
right.
So that's kind of, it's kind of where, where we're at. I don't think Carl is coming in tonight.
No, he isn't.
Okay. And I guess we do have the benefit of having our fire and police chiefs here. Are there any questions for them as we,
One thing, I read the minutes from last week's meeting, and looking at here, there was some comments about the police cruisers going to Dodge Chargers. They're not Dodge Chargers, that's the state police. We're going to the new Ford, where Ford is replacing the Crown Vic with an Interceptor. That's the new model
Okay.
Ford that they're replacing it with, so that's what we would be getting.
I
But the
think,
minutes said charges.
Okay.
Charges are what the
Right,
state.
no, and I think that I spoke about that, and I think the reason I mentioned that, we were talking
swap
about
out of equipment.
when the conversation was we should defer some vehicles to next year. That would incur more cost because the state bid would be going to the Chargers.
No.
A different vehicle anyway, and there would be more of, there
You
would be
can't
more
swap,
of an
you
Right,
can't
well,
swap
that-
out
Can't
equipment.
swap the equipment.
Well, it's 2 weeks ago, we had that discussion, we brought that up, and I said the reason why, if you moved out a cruiser, then we'd incur that additional cost swapping over, and you, the chairman, said, yeah, that's right, because of the swap over, because they won't go from the Crown Vics to the new Interceptor. The Interceptor is the new Ford police cruiser.
Not following.
All right, it's the chair's prerogative, we're gonna, since we have our esteemed guest here, Mr. Packard from the Solid Waste Commission, we always take our non-paid guests first, no disrespect to
You're
the.
talking about Scott's rules.
What?
Scott's
Yeah,
rules.
so, we're gonna come back to you two. What? Right? So, David, why don't you join us, and first off, the board would just like to recognize all your hard work on this, and we know that you've brought a lot of professional experience in your job to the Solid Waste Commission with regard to the Concord Co-op and the agreement. So on behalf of the board, I just want to thank you for an outstanding job and all the time you've put into it, as long as the other colleagues on the commission. With that, the board has had an opportunity to review the Concord Co-op agreement, and there are some questions, that we have, and I'm going to turn over to Nick first and foremost. There was one question that was a biggie for us, and the biggie for us was whether or not we had the legal authority to execute this agreement, or whether, because the contract itself states that it's a vote of the legislative body, which we are not the legislative body, the citizens are the legislative body. And not quite sure what that implies.
On page 19 of the agreement, section 2.3, approvals.
Is it, I haven't read that, but it's a possibility, because when this cooperative was established, it was a 49M agreement, which I believe 49M has to be approved at town meeting. So the original municipalities that were part of this were, I believe, a 49M contract, because it's a district formed through 49M, RSA 49M.
No, what I can address that from the limited knowledge that I have of that. This contract was based on the original Concord Co-op contract for the trash burner. They took that and they cut and pasted and added some things in here.
Right, and each
Now-
municipality that was in there had to approve it, had to go to
Right,
the town
and to the
meeting.
extent that that is still in here, that's why the Solid Waste Commission recommended that our town attorney take a look at it, subject to you folks giving an approval or not an approval on it, to determine if there's any unknowns in here, this thing being the approval process. I'm the same opinion. I'm not sure whether it has to go to a town vote or not. But talking to Jim Pressure from the co-op, it was my impression that they envisioned towns, essentially selectmen bodies, giving a conditional approval subject to a vote by the voters if necessary, so that they could move forward with the understanding that the town had an intention to move forward.
Right.
And that's all because the actual language says this agreement shall be subject to the approval of the cooperative joint board and approval of the agreement by the legislative body.
Right, and just,
Yeah.
but I think part of it, because it was a 49M solid waste district when it was originally formed, they were all members, and the way that was set up, they were all members, they all responsible for the expenses, they all responsible for everything, but we are not, I don't believe, we are becoming a member of the district. We just think this is just a.
Oh, I understand, but I can only go by the
Correct.
language in
No,
the
no, I understand, but
agreement
what
that
he
we
says,
have.
they took that original, when they formed the district, they took that language and they put it in here, and I
So,
think that's where.
the
why that's-
feedback from our board is that that language kind of handcuffs us to take action on it.
Right.
Formal action. We are allowed to execute contracts even long-term ones, as long as there's an out clause, which clearly that contract does provide out clauses at any time.
Yeah.
So that gives us, so we would ordinarily be able to execute the contract if it were not for that language. So I think, we can certainly route this to Drescher to take a look at. We were under the impression that this contract would not really be, could not really be changed because they didn't want all these towns coming back and saying, we don't like this and we don't like that. I believe that the fact, if that could be changed with a language amended to say, by order of the, governing body, if so authorized, or, whatever language to give boards of selectmen the opportunity to proceed rather than going, to town meeting. Obviously, we could go in that vein if that's what the cooperative is willing to do, because there is an out clause.
I think at this point, the Solid Waste Commission has taken this as far as we can. It then goes into your hands, and
Okay.
Bill Drescher, let's see, Carl Quirm had forwarded it to the contract itself to Bill back on August 5th, and then I had forwarded my comments, the unresolved comments, to him as well at that time.
Outside of the issue of the whole voting piece of it, town meeting versus selectmen ability to execute it, is there anything else that any of the board members would like to convey, whether they don't like something or want to see something amended?
Just a question, and I brought it up last week. At this point, there's nothing in stone as to what the rates will be.
That's correct. And it's going to be, it's essentially market-based, but the co-op will establish on a, I believe it's a yearly basis, what the base payments are going to be for recycles. Then, if there's more revenue brought in over and above that, then it gets distributed out as well. So that there's a standard monthly payment, but then there will be distributed payments throughout the year as well.
The way this termination of agreement is laid out is that if the co-op were to not make a payment to the town, but in lieu of that require a payment, we have, I believe, 3 months to exercise the termination. If we don't,
Correct.
then we lose that right until the payments start again to the town, and that resets that termination right.
I believe, subject to check on that, I think we've got a single opportunity to do that throughout the contract. I don't think it's a repeatable instance that can happen.
No, it does. It's restored when the monthly payment again becomes a payment from the cooperative to the
Okay,
city
and that may
town.
have been something we had talked about as well. That goes back probably 2 months now when we had that conversation.
But I guess where I'm going with this is we don't know the economic outlook in 6 or 8 months. What if the contract begins with us being required to pay the co-op? When does that term, and it never gets to where they're paying us, when does that termination clause restore?
Okay, what I would also suggest you've got to consider the flip side of this is if we don't send our recycles to the facility, we're going to have to pay to dispose of those recycles as if they were standard trash, which is right now $75 a ton, I believe, is what we're paying to get rid of our standard trash.
Well, no, as opposed to our current Casella.
Casella is basically a day-to-day. There's no real contract there.
Right.
And Casella is actually going to be, as we understand it, actually managing and running the facility up there. So I can't see that Casella would have any great reason to do anything that would be counter to their interest with the co-op by taking us on if we decided to stop sending stuff to the co-op.
No, I understand, but I'm just looking at the practical sense. If we begin the contract in a negative,
Yep.
then in essence, it could continue that way for 15 years and there would never be an out clause.
Well, you still have an out in the contract. We can still cancel the contract and walk away from it, but you don't have a. And I guess that's probably where I misspoke previously, is that we can't just walk away and come back again.
They need assurances themselves that.
Correct, because they're
large capital outlay.
Well, that's why they're trying to get communities like Goffstown, particularly with our larger volume, to get signed on to this contract. They're trying to do the same thing with Manchester. Their entire operation is predicated on a certain number of tons to make this thing move forward.
Now, the other thing that we have to, also consider, which I think is a positive, is that the fact that we're going to be significantly decreasing the time spent driving to Boston, which is where we're going now. It'll be going to Concord as opposed to Boston. Even if the cost of the recyclables or the revenue generated is the same, or even if it was, we took a slight loss, the offset between the wear and tear in trucks, the employee time, I think would far outweigh it. I mean, I see this as a worst case scenario push, but a far greater chance that the town's going to save a considerable amount of money by going with the co-op. That's just my.
It will also be part of the ruling body as well, based on population, because there is a board that Goffstown will have a seat on that board. So it isn't like the co-op is running itself and we're just getting whatever the co-op is giving us. We're actually a participant in the operating board.
Yeah.
Which I had asked if we could get a list of the potential communities signing on, because my understanding in this is our votes are based on population.
Correct.
And you could have a large community similar to Manchester sign on, which then becomes the gorilla in the room, because population-wise, they now outvote.
Right, it's going to be that way with Concord and with Manchester. There really isn't much of a way around that. I mean, they could have locked out communities like Goffstown and not even allow them to be part of the administration of the co-op up there. But I think they've viewed it as being a real positive for them, particularly a community like Goffstown that does a lot of recycling. Mm-hmm. And at this point, Manchester isn't doing much recycling even on their pilot program.
At some point, could you just, and you don't have to do it right now, but just forward me that you said that we can walk out at any time. We wouldn't do it in and out, but I haven't been able to find anything that would allow us to just terminate for any. But I guess that's my only concern, is that not knowing in advance what those charges would be. I would see it if we start off with payments from us, even though it may be the best thing on the market. If we don't trigger that clause in the beginning, we could potentially never. We don't know what the economy is going to look like 8 months from now or 10 months from now, or what. And we've seen recyclables go up and down.
And certainly just the period of time that I've sat on the commission as well, go from a net revenue coming in down to basically zero, just being able to get rid of our recyclables without having to pay for them, and things look like they're slightly on the upswing again now.
Yeah, it's a commodity. I mean, it's just no matter how you slice it, it's gonna fluctuate from month to month and year to year. Other than some of the escape language, that's what we can call our out clause language. Is there anything else in the co-op agreement that anyone has any issues with? So it's the out clause language, the trigger for that, and as well as the ability for the selectmen to vote to enter into it, which we have to get our arms around. Other than that, I think we're.
Could we get the copy? Carl had mentioned the DSM environmental review, that he was going to get us a copy of that.
I can forward that. You forwarded that to me as well.
Because I think there were some estimates of rates.
All right, anything else? So our next steps, I'm trying to get our whole next steps. Obviously, they're looking for commitments from town. So if we, in the worst case scenario, and this goes, this is not something that the selectmen can execute, and it goes before town meeting, you're saying that the co-op, I guess, wants a letter or some sort of letter of intent that this board supports this. We'll be putting it on our warrant, and we'll be recommending it on our warrant or something?
I believe that's what they're looking for, barring a full-fledged signing on of the contract at this point.
All right.
Again, I wish Carl were here because he's had more in-depth discussions.
Well, we can find out more information.
So this does have to go to town meetings?
We're not sure.
According to the language.
According to the language of the contract,
It does.
yes, but as
but
David said, this contract was cut and pasted from different agreements and
Previous.
contracts, et cetera, and if the co-op themselves are amenable
Okay,
to
but I guess-
changing the language of the contract, which would allow municipalities with authority to execute it.
Okay, but I guess the question though that I have, that Nick, and again, I don't have that, I don't have that agreement here, and I didn't look at it all that thorough. But we aren't, there's nothing in this contract that we're joining a district, is there?
I don't remember seeing anything about a solid waste
Okay.
district.
No, I'm saying, because this is only for recyclables.
Well, yes, correct. Only for, that's the only thing I found in there was for recyclables, not the solid waste portion.
Okay, and I guess I didn't realize about the weighted votes. I mean, I didn't catch that.
I think it's
That's,
something like
yeah, that's under the,
5 votes per,
Now, do you need a vote of that board to be released from the contract?
no, because you still operate as an entity. We are our own entity, so if you wanted to walk away from the contract, you're not looking for a board approval to, on their side, a board approval to allow you to get out of the contract.
see, I didn't read anything in there regarding that. I read 2 different areas where it could be terminated, and one is obviously for cause, if they didn't uphold their side, and the other one was if the payments changed. But I didn't see anything else where we could just decide within that 15-year time to leave.
Well, what is the purpose of the weighted vote, I guess? That's.
They set fees at the beginning of every, annually, anything that comes
Okay,
before the
I
cooperative.
guess, so what that's raising is my concern of how do you get out of this? As long as you don't have to be voted out, no, they have to let you out. So I think we need a little further, I'll have to look a little.
All of
closer.
Article 15 deals with termination and default and gives specific examples of reasons. Or examples of defaults that would allow you to get
Oh,
out.
yeah, facility governance is what I was looking for here, is Article 6, starting on page 27. And we would be part of the Recycling Facility Operating Committee on page 31.
All right, I guess, in trying to, expedite this, is we're not gonna take any action on this evening. We have a couple of issues that we have to resolve. Are there any more, more specific questions to David, that have to do with the co-op? Obviously, the opt-out language is important to us. That is the most significant
Yeah.
that we have. And I think we understand that we have to, we're making a commitment, as well as a lot of other communities are, to regionalize something, and with that, everyone kind of has to buy into the concept and kind of go in with that notion that, yeah, we're all going to be in this thing kind of together, and that there is always a certain degree of risk or uneasiness that's going to come up with any cooperative. And it sounds to me, that I think Goffstown has done their homework on this and has gone through it. The commission has kind of gone through it. We just have to be careful on the opt-out language.
I was going to ask, have you heard from Bill Drescher, or has anybody heard from Bill
Not
Drescher
yet.
yet?
Not yet.
So,
I was
He will
inter-
definitely address those types of
Right.
issues.
Well, I was interested in hearing back as to what his take was on it after all the time we had spent on it up to this point. I'm always interested in finding out what somebody else's reading of it means.
Yeah.
But I agree, I think that was one of the things that Carl and I were most interested in finding out from Bill Drescher, as to making sure that we had our, call it an escape clause or an easy out.
does the co-op entity, when do they expect a response from Goffstown and the other member communities?
My understanding from Carl at our commission meeting was that the board of the co-op has given a conditional go-ahead to the project based on whatever the timing is of their critical mass of sign-ons.
Okay.
And they're just waiting now for, apparently some of the smaller communities have gone ahead and signed on, and I don't have the list. I know Carl probably knows that. But we're a big player, obviously Manchester's a big player. I have to assume that all the existing co-op members have all signed on. So they must be getting there at this point.
All right. Any other questions? Not hearing
Thank
any.
you.
Okay.
Once again, just want to thank you, and if you could extend our thanks to the commission as well.
I certainly will, and I'll get back to you with the best information I can dig out of you.
Are there any, while you're here, are there any other issues that I know you spend a lot of time on this particular subject, but is there anything else from the Solid Waste Commission, meetings that you have any questions for the board or any comments that you want to make relative?
Just interestingly that Carl offered kind of at the tail end of our meeting is that for whatever reason, compared to last year, the total tonnages of both recycles and refuse have both gone up. We don't know exactly what that means yet as to whether people are staying home more and buying more consumer products. People are doing more stuff on their houses because they're not going on vacations and they're doing upgrades, or maybe all of us are getting to that certain age when we need to get the house fixed up to sell it and move into smaller quarters. But he was going to research it a little bit more and see what the waste streams are and what the numbers are telling us at this point.
Okay.
So it's just very interesting.
All right.
Yeah, could be. Less eating out. Eating home more.
And we'll get with Carl. I mean, we, in terms of some of, we have a recycling / garbage or waste truck in here, which was not voted in at town meeting last year, which is in the CIP this year. So we'll get with Carl on those things. But I know that has some correlation to what you folks deal with. So.
Yeah, no, some of the equipment is already in the process of either being overhauled or is on order to like a compactor and baler.
Right.
So I know that those are in process to keep the facility going too.
Okay. All right.
Great,
Thank you very much, David.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right. Going back to old business now with CIP committee submission to the planning board. As I mentioned prior to our meeting with David Packard, was CIP committee made a recommendation or draft recommendation to the planning board, who actually oversees the CIP, and the planning board voted to recommend CIP's bottom line, or their work. And just for the general knowledge out there, last year, our adopted budget for capital expenses was, this includes both town and school, was $3,784,430. In 2011, the CIP group met, recommended, and was then approved by the planning board for capital expenses of $6,204,445. And I don't want to be misquoted on this, so I'm going to be kind of careful, and correct me if I'm wrong, anyone, but CIP, planning board, they talk about it's the part of the planning process. Then there's also the budget, which is the budget process, which is a completely different process.
Well, yeah, and Tim Redmond, who chaired CIP, made that in his presentation to the planning board, did explain that they're looking at the planning. They're not a budget committee. They don't go through the numbers or the project, as a budget committee. They go through the project as it's presented, and they look at it, and I mean, obviously, if it's something that's like, asking for a jetliner for something, which is way out of whack, then it would be something that would be questionable. As long as it's they're reasonable, that makes sense, and they follow that, and then they look at that, and they
Okay.
try to just smoothen it out.
So, Phil, last week we went through all of the major line items, and like I said, we came up with, I think it was like 6 or 7 more of the bigger ticket items, such as fire engines, ambulance. We went through financial software, dump trucks, garbage truck, and the list goes on. And that's kind of where we're at, and I was just curious as to see does the board wish to start to address some of these things now? Or do you wish to entertain, if you have any questions, we have both the police and the fire chief that are here, if you have any questions. I'm kind of, personally, I understand what the issues are with regard to these capital requests. It's just a matter of now, what can we afford to plug into CIP in terms of our budget, and what we have to kind of defer. I think, with I think I said I'll just use town only. Town only, just bear with me a second.
Page 6.
Page 6, right?
Number 1.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Nick. Okay, so just to put things in perspective, our budget last year for capital on the town side was $2.1 million, and I'm rounding it, and CIP approved almost 5.1, so it's a $3 million difference. And as I said last week, and I'll reiterate it again, last year the town had about a $1 million bond article, which was for a fire engine, a dump truck, and a solid waste vehicle, and then there was offsetting revenue on the fire engine piece. That did not get approved. So if it had gotten approved, we would have spent $3.1 million, and our 2010 CIP would have been about $4 million. I just want to put that in perspective.
Right.
It still would have gone up, it would have gone up $1 million. But I think what this is showing us is that when you defer, the need is not going away per se. It's just coming at you at more hot and heavy. So there's still a hump there. There was a hump 3 years ago. There's still a hump.
Always going to be a hump.
There's always going to be one. So this is a planning document. Unfortunately, or fortunately, we have to worry about next year and what is the most critical thing next year. Again, I think we've got to take a look at some of the bigger items that are out there, and whether that be we have a request for an engine and a tanker pumper, and the ambulance is offsetting revenue, so that's kind of a push. We have dump truck, again, that's the same thing that we had last year, and the trash vehicle, and the financial software, and our road program, which is a very large expenditure. That was almost $2.5 million. So I think if we're going to have these discussions, I think we have to start talking philosophically about where are we going to spend some of our money, where we're not going to spend our money. And does anybody want to start off and this is where the rubber meets the road, folks. This is where we have to make some tough decisions.
Well, let me ask this question. As far as the financial software, what is the reality of if that were to get approved and gone through, the approval process, what is the reality of actually getting done?
Again, I want to, Sue mentioned I think if it was anything that jumped off for me in terms of the first thing to go is probably going to be this financial software.
I think we had a consensus on that.
We had a consensus on that one, so that was the low-hanging fruit, Phil. So that one, I think we've kind of got our arms around.
You got to start someplace.
We took
before you get up on the ladder, let's just reach up.
We did pick the apple off the ground. So
but you guys didn't actually take it off, did you?
No,
not yet.
Okay. But I guess I'm not saying that I'm ready to make a motion or anything to take it off.
And we have to keep in mind here that's not to say that this financial software is just we do need it. It's needed.
God, I agree.
Very much so. But in terms of some of these other needs, and I think we have to really, really investigate it just a little bit more. So that one, I think, is our first step.
And let's stay on the financial software. I think it was brought out last week. This cost is part of it's for the software and part of it would be for the data conversion. And Sue had information from another town that's recently done new software installation, and more than half of their expense was data conversion. So it's not to give the impression that all that money is just being spent on buying
Right.
the software.
That's the project.
And the risk to our town is that the vendor who is maintaining our software, should there be problems with it, is getting risky, right? May not be able to support the software because it's already 10 years old.
It's 10 years old, and the person that provides the support is now part-time, and one person.
It's kind of like if you go to QuickBooks, after 5 years, your version, they don't support anymore.
Right.
Kind of like that, so you have to
Well, that's
upgrade
part,
or something.
something that's part of the product.
Yeah, exactly.
They know that,
Exactly.
that they want to be able to sell you future upgrades in addition, so.
We might feel comfortable risking one further year delay. But as
It's a
you
risk.
It's a risk.
It's a
and
risk.
We certainly have to be mindful of that a year from now when we're discussing the same item.
Well, I guess the reason why, only thing I'm saying is I understand the need for it, the necessity and the need for it, and I'm not trying to bring out, that it's not necessary. It's very, very crucial. But I guess the question that I have is the reality, if it were to get approved with all the work, I mean, the staff that we have, the amount of multitasking and additional responsibilities that everybody's taking on, and to take on a project like this at this point. I mean, we got the Lynchville Park project.
Yeah,
Takes a lot.
I guess my take is that is going to be stuff every year. There
Oh,
always
no,
is.
I understand.
The other thing that I think we have to take a look at, and this is my personal opinion, is that this is a pretty hefty price tag, and I'm not sure if it was you, Nick, somebody had mentioned it last week. Is there some sort of product where we can pay a yearly fee? Because we know these things don't.
Contract?
It's like, they have like a shelf life of so many years anyway. So you're buying it, but it only. I'd rather, if you can go year to year on it, and you have your service or your training as part of it, and it might be a better route to go than just buying it. The other thing too is if it's not a very good product, you didn't spend $400,000 on it. Maybe you're in year 3 and you say, I don't like this so much.
But usually they're going to, write you a 5-year
Right.
contract, so to speak, and X amount of years,
Right.
so they're recouping the
bulk
majority of
of
their
it.
money.
Yeah, but it's not
You can't break
all
the,
of it.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there's pros and cons.
Okay,
Joe.
so is there? I think if are we gonna get into the meat and potatoes here and start making motions, or
Well, I
do we
don't know,
want
I
to wait?
mean, you're the chairman.
I'm gonna ask. Well, I do what you gentlemen prefer to do.
I like to make my case, I like to have all the motions basically at the end of our discussion, once we know what we will take off as a total package. For example, on this first item, I believe we generally concur that it's going to come off. So let's keep that in our hip pocket and move on with all the others, and then take it as a total package at the end.
But the only thing I would like to do is just make sure that we have some type of a commitment or an understanding that this is something that it is a priority. It's just that the reality of it is that probably that next year it's got to
Right.
be on the front.
I mean, it is a significant priority, but we are faced with the task of having to defer projects based upon what we deem as most critical and prioritize. And I'm sure we're going to get second guessed on what we determine at the end of the day is priority versus not priority, or what can be deferred or what can't be deferred. And that's what we're going to have to live with. So let's go back to what Selectman Pierce said. Do you want to, that's his opinion. Do you want to just put these things in the parking lot and say, yep, this is what we're going to be considering? Or do we want to just start and just have discussions and go through it and make votes? And I'm okay with doing it his way. Selectman Fournier is not here, so we can park this one and kind of go on to some
Well,
other things
I don't have a problem with that, because at least we can have a thorough discussion, and
All right.
hopefully we can come to a consensus of where we're gonna be at.
So let's just, is it okay, I'm kind of like linear here. Can we start from page 1 and kind of work our way down? And we do have our program of 3 cruisers, which we have done for a very long time. And I guess, Nick, I want to kind of mention something. We did not budget for revenue on radio or the repeater system, right?
On the fire side.
On the
correct.
fire side. We are operating under an umbrella of a budget anyway, which was 90 some odd thousand, right? 96,000.
93?
So we have 93,000. Let's just say $90,000 to $100,000 of revenue that is unanticipated. There's 2 things that we can do. I mean, one, it will be money that will go to offset tax rate next year, or we buy these cruisers out of this year's budget.
Excuse me, are you talking about a different, I thought we were talking about the police vehicles.
Yeah.
And you slipped over to the police
No, because
communications.
this particular year, we applied for a grant, and we got the grant, but we never budgeted the revenue. So I know we can't
Gross
overextend our,
appropriated
we
the
can't,
190.
right, we gross appropriated it. So we appropriated $190-something thousand. We got the grant, okay? But we never put in a place marker for revenue, offsetting revenue. So we will have 90-some-odd thousand of unanticipated revenue. Now, I know we cannot expend more than our appropriation, but typically we're planning on, we're not going to totally expend our budget. We haven't done that in years. So it's just a matter of, do we try to buy these cruisers this year? 'Cause it would be a push. Does anybody know what I'm? where I'm
You
going
wanna
here?
buy next year's cruisers this year.
This year.
Right.
And would that help us in terms of not having that changeover of Ford Interceptor?
Well,
We
the
don't have to go that
changeover
route.
isn't in 2011, it's 2012, correct, Chief?
Is in 2012.
2012.
So 2011 isn't the changeover. My concern is if we back off 1 or 2 cruises in 2011,
Okay.
that it would add up probably in 2012 or 2013, that we would compound the issue.
But I don't think that's what you're saying. We could order the vehicles, pay for the vehicles in December, and you're going to take advantage of this year's prices. You're purchasing your new vehicles. You'll be getting them sooner than waiting until March.
As long as they're available.
Correct. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's
Everything
really,
is-
it's,
no,
But you'd be taking them off the CIP in essence for next year.
Yeah.
For
because
next year.
You're buying them now
Hope-
in this fiscal year.
and I don't think it has much of an impact in terms of the finances, because it's unanticipated revenue, which was gonna go to offset the tax rate next year, so whether you do it or you
But
don't.
that unanticipated revenue has
Yeah.
already made up for other
Other
lost
things.
revenue.
Yeah.
I wouldn't justify it that way. If you know you're gonna have a surplus of 100,000 at the end of the year, and you wanna buy the vehicles, then I would say it that way, but that revenue is already offsetting lost revenues.
When you say lost revenues that we did not anticipate,
That we anticipated not getting.
that would have been built into the budget.
Right.
No,
When we-
things that came up afterwards.
Well, that's what I'm saying, things that we did not anticipate last year during the budget season.
Right.
We-
We need the revenue. To meet our revenue expectations, that anticipated revenue is going to help us meet our revenue
So our revenue was
expectations.
down this
Right.
year. Okay, see, I wasn't aware, I mean,
What
we assumed that, but
was it? There was something early in the year I told you about that we weren't getting, and I said, but the grant will more than make up for that.
Yeah, we lost the
Yes,
revenues
yeah.
from,
Right.
24,000?
New Boston and where?
You carry a gun, you can talk up if you want. You, not so much, Chief, sorry.
No, but if I can just add, I think though, the way you're saying the way you're expressing it and the way Sue was expressing it, you're getting to the same point, but you're getting there from two different ways.
Right.
You're saying because we have this revenue, we're gonna take this revenue here, and we're gonna buy the cruisers here, which we can't do.
Right.
What Sue was saying, that revenue's gonna come into here, okay? Now, out of here, we'll have the money that we can get, if we have the money, we can get the cruisers.
I'm prepared to end discussion on what I said.
You said, I'm
that-
just
that-
trying to clarify, so you didn't get misquoted.
There's nobody here to misquote. He's good. Actually,
No
we like
pressure
that.
on me.
It's just an unusual way. We usually budget when we want to purchase something like
Okay.
vehicles. And
I'm just gonna give my own, I think this program works well. It is one of our primary first response for emergency. This is what I think government is for. This is important that, I don't wanna jerk around with this one.
You're talking about the replacement
Yeah.
schedule? Well,
Right.
the other thing too, on the replacement schedule, that many years ago, this was looked at between the selectmen and the budget committee, and they worked up these replacement schedules. And these came, these are a result of that. I mean, this is not something that's just, the chief all of a sudden says, this is what I need. I mean, this replacement schedule was generated through the budget with, several years ago.
Yes, Nick?
Just a quick question, and it came up during CIP, if I could ask the chief. Vehicle number 18, which is assigned to the school resource officer,
Yes.
how, that changes when you get the new vehicle in, that goes to a patrol officer, and their vehicle goes to the school resource officer?
The school resource officer's vehicle is not a primary response vehicle, it's a secondary, but it is in fact a marked unit. So there's a presence at the school, but it's not an emergency response vehicle, not a frontline vehicle.
So I guess my question is, when the new vehicle comes in, will that new vehicle be assigned on the front line, and then a frontline vehicle would then be turned back?
Correct.
Correct.
Thank you.
And they go by mileage.
Right.
Jim, or how the transmission is.
That's how I thought it was, but there was a question at CIP, and it was never brought up.
All right. So is there, I just want to kind of, we're going to have to make some tough decisions as we go
Right.
through this
My
thing.
turn.
Can
I
I
am-
just say one thing? Are we all okay with, or you want to?
I'm comfortable with the 3 vehicles in the 2011 CIP,
For police?
please. Yeah,
Okay.
that's
Is
my
that a
view.
consensus of the board for the most part, that that's something, that's a program that we're going to kind of remain with? Okay. Okay. Now we move on to,
Let's stay with police.
what else is, the communications?
Just my suggestion,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair. Just take one department.
The other thing that we have is the communication piece. And the question that was asked of us last week or the week before was, it's in our CIP, but so is the offsetting grant money. So the question was, if we do not get the grant, are we going to go ahead and with phase 2 of this project? I can only speak for myself. I said no. We can't go ahead if we don't get the grant. In terms of all the the priorities, I mean, we got to fix the communications, but part of the attractiveness of going with the first phase was we got the grant. I can't. That's only me. I don't know where the other selectmen stand on it. So I'm in favor personally of keeping it in with the offsetting revenue of the grant money. If we get the grant, we go ahead. We don't get the grant, we don't go ahead. That's just me. I don't know where the rest of the selectmen.
Can you ask the chief where we stand with the grant?
Yeah, sure.
Still working up the grant itself. And the reason is we're trying to incorporate into the grant our narrow banding requirements in 2000, I believe it's 13 or 12. And then in addition to that, we also have to move from trunking to our conventional mode. So we're getting away from trunking. So we're trying to wrap all those costs up into the grant itself. And we're trying to get that grant worded so that we can, in fact, be awarded that grant and cover all our needs within our communication system. So it's there. It's just a matter of probably a week or two until it is submitted. I know Chief O'Brien's spoken with emergency management, they're ready, they're waiting for it, just trying to get it so that it's worded properly.
Okay. So I guess, I mean, now here's where I guess where rubber meets the road again, is that, you know, there's two ways of going about this. One is that, are we gonna support this with or without the grant revenue? And I guess I've stated my position on it, and just need to ask everyone else, where do we stand on this? If we were not to get this grant, are we gonna go ahead with, you know, phase two? Which means that the town would bear the entire $190,000 to $200,000 cost.
Explain to me how it mechanically works. If we keep 192,000 in the CIP, in theory, we can move out and buy the whole package ourselves without, if the grant
Yes,
doesn't.
technically,
Yes.
you got it.
If we're gonna depend on, if we would like to depend on the grant, does that require us to put this purchase as a separate article?
No.
Just put in the offsetting revenue of
Yes.
96,000.
We just have the understanding that there's an offsetting revenue with it, and that if we don't get the offsetting revenue, we're not having the expenditure.
But then you have raised taxes for the
But
$192,000
then we've still
appropriation.
raised the taxes.
Yes.
No, because you have your net, you're offsetting that, your $96,000 offset, you don't raise, you don't,
Yeah.
in
You're
essence, you
raising
don't
that.
raise the
You're
full.
raising half.
You're raising half,
Right.
you're raising taxes for half,
You
because,
have to gross
Gross
appropriate.
appropriate.
I understand you gross
So-
appropriate.
When you
Yep.
set the tax rate, you have an opportunity to revise your revenues. So you know you didn't get the grant, so you delete that from your revenue expectation when you set the tax rate, okay? So you're raising the whole 192,000 at that point. Because
But you're adding it to your
appropriations can't change when you set the
No,
tax
I
rate.
understand that, but when you set the tax rate, you have your appropriations,
Your
and you also
revenue.
have your anticipated revenue.
Right.
And together, that makes up your tax rate.
Right, but if you know
So
you're
if
not
you-
getting the grant when you go in October to set the tax rate, then you back out that grant as revenue. You may have anticipated it in your budget, but you back it out,
You back out the
revenue.
revenue from the grant.
You
You don't,
can't-
you
you
don't
cannot-
back out the other
You
50%.
cannot back out the appropriation.
You're saying in
That's an
October, we may
authorized
not know by October.
We will not.
Next October.
Next one.
Well, that's.
Next October, when you set next year's tax rate.
Not this year's.
Okay.
When people vote,
Mhm.
again, you gross appropriate, I'm gonna use rounder numbers to make life easier. $200,000, and with an offsetting revenue, so in
Of
terms of the
100,000.
amount raised by taxation for that vote is $100,000.
Not
Yes.
necessarily. At that time, right?
At that time, right.
when
Then
you
we get to the
actually set
following,
the
right,
tax
then when we
rate-
go and actually set it, it can be different, just like, because they're all projections.
Because if you didn't get the
Right.
grant, you're not counting that
Right.
100,000 for revenue.
Right,
So I
and
think we're
but
all
we
on the
wouldn't
same page
spend
here.
the,
But then we wouldn't spend the
wouldn't be spending the
$100,000.
But you're still
No.
raising taxes for a $200,000 appropriation because you can't back out the appropriation.
Right, but we are raising.
So you're increasing your surplus.
Right, which would then go to offset your taxes the following year anyway.
Right.
Okay. I'm still good with what I said.
Okay. I just didn't want
Yeah.
anyone thinking that you weren't raising taxes for it. On the phase one, which was the fire communications this year, we did not budget revenue, and we were pleasantly surprised to get the grant, which was a great asset to us since we saw declining revenues in other areas of our budget. That same situation can happen next year if you don't count on the grant. And you get it. Still goes into surplus.
I'd rather include the revenue.
My concern on this is, and we overuse this word so much, but it's officer safety.
No, I know, and we've
heard
yeah,
this at the.
we
at
did,
the-
we heard that loud and clear.
Loud and clear.
Right.
When my guys stand out here on Main Street in front of the town hall and cannot talk to my communications people, cannot talk to other officers. We had a burglary last week where we do a track in the woods after a bad guy, and we can't talk to even the guy behind us, never mind communications. It's that bad out there. And without this communication upgrade, someone's going to get hurt. If we're lucky, just hurt. And that's my concern.
Then the question is that where do we get the other $100,000 from? Because it's not, I mean, these are all, important things in the grand scheme of things. But I think we're trying to make it work. There's just a lot of things going on at the same time. I mean, the other thing too is that it allows us, I think at this point, I mean, we're going to be putting in, this other half of the system to see how it's going to function, and I don't know. There's so many competing priorities here, whether it be fire engines and, we got to plow the roads. We got to do a lot of things here. I mean,
I've got to keep my guys
yeah.
safe.
No, and
That-
right.
I can't reiterate that enough. I've got to keep my men safe, and right now, they're not safe. They're not safe out on the road. They walk up to cars in the middle of the night. I've got double gun calls. From '06 to '07, my number of weapons calls doubled. From '07 to '08, my numbers of weapon calls doubled again. And from '08 to '09, they doubled again. That's what we're dealing with out there. It's not Goffstown anymore. It's part of Manchester.
Anyone else want to be heard on this?
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
And it's a silly question probably, because it's very simple, and I'm sure but I've never asked. Has anyone ever explored increasing the height of the antenna and what that would do?
They have in the past. Right now, our frequency, and we've had people in from CENTCOM who've got their fancy cameras and everything, our frequency isn't a usable frequency right now. It's got to do with the height of the antenna. It's just the usableness of the frequency. It's in such a cloud or a shadow of all the other frequencies, of all the other paging frequencies, etc. It just can't work.
I'm not talking about the one up on the mountain. I'm saying the one at
Headquarters?
headquarters. The receiving antenna.
No, we have not looked into that.
Maybe somebody might just want to ask that question to see what kind of a improvement as a stopgap measure for reception. Chief has
Just real quick on the new system, the way that it's designed is it'll transmit and receive from the mountain. So it's going to take advantage of our real estate that we have out there. So raising it, the location where the dispatch is has always been a problem because you're surrounded almost in a cone by hills and rock ledge behind it. So I think even by going up 200 feet, you're not going to solve your problem in those problem areas, because you still have significant real estate to try to get radio signal over. I guess the answer to the problem was trying to get, you could always get radio signal up and away, and that'd be to the summit. So we're designing the system to do that. Whether it's getting it to the closest voter site, which could be at the fire station right here in the village, or it could be the mountain itself, depending on where you are. So, but unfortunately, what we have now is probably not improvable. Is that a word?
Anyone else?
Well, I don't hear any discussion that we're about to remove this, so I think.
I think the question is, whether or not to include the offsetting revenue, whether or not to proceed without the grant. That's the issue, at hand. And
It is listed, correct, Sue?
Right.
The
It's
offsetting revenue is listed
It says grant being sought.
Right.
on the revenue line, though.
It's listed, but it's not a requirement.
What line is it on the chart?
123, page 4.
No, that's the
Appropriation.
expense.
Wait, there is no appropriation shown.
On the revenue,
Revenues start on page 5.
No, it wasn't added. That was.
No, it wasn't added in.
Oh, wasn't?
No.
No. It's mentioned as a note that they're applying for the grant.
Oh, okay.
It was not added into revenues.
So is
Unless
that,
the planning board
is that a
directed that.
decision for us to put the revenue line in?
No, we
That's-
can't.
It's an option?
Can we add that to this?
And the,
You wouldn't add it to this,
Right, you
but
would add
it
it to
would
the
be in your
budget.
budget
To the
year, because
budget.
that's all you're dealing
Yeah, I don't
with,
think we
is
can
your
add it to
budget year.
this.
we could add it to the revenue as the town.
So, I assume that will go in the parking lot as well?
As far as what?
I'm just,
It's acceptable.
Well, I guess I'm not quite sure what you mean.
yes.
I think I took it that this stays in CIP. The question that we have to answer at one point is whether or not that $96,000 offsetting will be put into revenue. Am I correct?
Yes. So what we'll do is, I mean, we're identifying some of the issues, and then when Selectman Fournier is here, I think we'll be in a position to say, for an example, motion with regard to the financial software, motion, with regard to the consensus of the four of us here was to keep the cruisers in. Regarding phase two, is there a motion with or without offsetting revenue? You follow? You know where I'm going?
We'll present a summary
You got it.
package
Right.
to you.
That's the police?
That's it. Then with regard to, we'll do fire, then we'll take a break. We have somebody we're going to non-public with,
Yeah,
and then we'll reconvene,
okay.
okay? So Chief O'Brien, if you want to come forward. We have a tanker pumper at 550,000, and that would be offset. Let me see. I think that one is on page 5. Capital reserve.
Was it 150?
Yes, it's on there. 140.
140.
Yes.
140?
42, I think it is. Yeah, that's on there.
Yep.
And also the ambulance for 190 is on there.
Okay.
All right.
So just remember, you can't cut the ambulance.
What?
You can't take the ambulance out from CIP,
And why?
because you gotta take the offsetting revenue also, so.
Right.
So we
Wash.
have already agreed to
We've
leave
already-
the ambulance in.
Yeah.
Ambulance is in.
Now we're
Just
discussing.
want to
the
use the
tank.
offsetting revenue for something else.
I think you can.
No.
You can't, because that's
Yeah.
not, your fund is
That's
not
for
established for
emails,
that. Okay. So tanker pumper, any questions here? Now, one of the things that I want to reiterate for those watching on TV, and that is this tanker pumper would replace two pieces of equipment, engine number 5 and tanker 5. So it would be reducing the fleet by one vehicle, gives us more flexibility in terms of having water already on the apparatus. And in conjunction with this, again, I want, part of our jobs, I think, as selectmen or department heads is to not assume that the public and the citizens have very good